A lot is happening in the world right now. For example, we're all very closely following the situation in Gaza. The bombing, the attacks on civilians, the crimes being waged against the Palestinian people. The way Israel is claiming that it's all self-defense, is claiming that all these people that are opposing them are all terrorists. The way there are huge Palestine protests happening, huge Palestine protests happening around the clock in the United States, but mainstream media is pretending not to notice them. The way, even though they've really tried to criminalize and lash out at pro-Palestine demonstrators, more and more people are coming out and taking to the streets for Palestine. So there's that. Meanwhile, U.S.-Russia relations are further deteriorating. The nuclear test ban treaty between Russia and the United States is no longer in effect. And that was one of the agreements that helped de-escalate the Cold War. And Russia feels, in light of certain global circumstances, they can't continue it. So there's that situation. Meanwhile, Iran is a huge supporter of the Palestinian people, has been for quite some time. Really since the Islamic Revolution. That was Imam Khomeini made clear that the Muslims of the world should unify to support the Palestinians. He launched the Day of Al-Quds, the last Friday of Ramadan, as a day that Muslims of the world rally in support of Palestine. And because of that, there's fear that this situation in the Middle East could escalate to a war with Iran. Already, the United States and Israel are attacking Iranian-aligned militias in Syria and in Lebanon. The Houthis that are sympathetic to Iran have launched missiles at Israel. They intend to join the fight on the side of the Palestinians. This is a very, very extreme situation, but much closer to home. Much closer to home, we're already seeing suffering. There's somebody who's a friend of our community. Obviously, I'm not going to say who because I don't want to violate their privacy. This person's a mother. This person's a very hardworking person. They texted me last night that they are now taking on their third job to pay their bills. Third job. And I think about that, how this working mother is taking on a third job in order to pay her bills. You should be able to support yourself on one job. One job should be enough to pay your bills, should be enough to make ends meet, should be enough to live a comfortable life. And she's not the only person I know like this. They tell us that the Joe Biden economy is being very good. Why are so many people taking on second jobs and third jobs just to get by? This inflation has made the cost of food ridiculous. The cost of food has gone up. The cost of everything has gone up. Meanwhile, they're continuing to pour more and more money into Israel, to murder the Palestinians, to pour more and more money into Ukraine, to throw the lives of its people away in an effort to hurt Russia. There's so much wrong with the current situation. And I'm here to tell you that we believe that we do have a solution. But that solution is not easy or obvious. And I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but that there's a really common tendency on the part of many people to try and take what seems like the easiest way out. It's very frustrating, but I've gotten very, very frustrated with this. But people want an obvious answer. People want an answer that seems like it won't require them to ask too many questions, that it won't require them to battle too much with the power structure. People want an answer that will seem to not shake things up too much. I tell the story of years ago in Detroit. I was working around the issue of home foreclosures. I spent the summer of 2008 in Detroit. I told you all the other night about getting kicked out of Cobo Hall and how many times I've been kicked out of Cobo Hall. Well, we were trying to build a movement in Detroit to stop home foreclosures and evictions. That's what we were trying to do. We were trying to put a moratorium on home foreclosures and evictions in the state of Michigan. And we had many meetings with local Detroit residents, working people from Detroit who were worried about losing their home. And I would get frustrated because we were saying that, we have a bill that's put forward by the state legislature that would stop home foreclosures. And we have a petition, and we're trying to organize rallies, and we're trying to get this bill passed. But there would always be somebody who came to the meetings who said, "Oh no, if you're going to be evicted, look at the lease, look at the foreclosure notice, and if your name is in all capital letters, that's not your name. So legally, they have no right to evict you." And that's bullshit. You'll get evicted, you'll get foreclosed on, whether your name's in all capital letters or all lowercase letters or a combination thereof. But there were always so many people that would rather hear that. Or, oh, they can't foreclose on you because of some weird loophole in the Constitution of the law. And there would always be some wise guy who would sit there and claim to have some obscure legal knowledge through which they couldn't take your home away from you because he had reinterpreted something. And it was all bullshit. But there were so many people that wanted to hear that rather than the tough answer, which is if we want to stop home foreclosures in the state of Michigan, we've got to build a movement. We got to be in the streets. We got to organize. We got to protest. We got to demand the passage of this law that would stop home foreclosures. That's the way we're going to stop home foreclosures in the state of Michigan. And there were so many people that just didn't want to hear that. They instead wanted to hear that, oh, if they don't technically have the lease from the state in their hand, and it was all this bullshit. And it was frustrating to me. And of course, when the time came, if you're getting kicked out of your home, and you make some argument about, well, it's not all capital letters. My name is not all capital letters. The bailiff and the sheriff, they don't care. You're still getting thrown out of your house. They come to foreclose on your home, and you say, but you don't have the correct paper in your hand, so therefore nobody cares. You're still getting thrown out of your home. Now, one thing that we did do that was quite exciting was we would sometimes block the trucks that kick people out of their homes. We would block the streets. We would take big dumpsters and block the streets, or we would, there were times that people got put back in their homes, that locks were broken and people's stuff got put back in. And then they were squatters, and then there was a whole another court procedure that would begin to have to kick them out. So there were things that we did that were direct actions that helped people stay in their homes. But overwhelmingly, there always seemed to be somebody who just said, "Oh, well, the answer is this legal loophole I've discovered that wouldn't help you in any way." But it was easier. It was easier. It sounded easier, and it sounded less defiant, less radical. In addition to that, there would always be somebody who would come to the meetings who would say, "Oh, well, what we need to do is elect Barack Obama." And we wouldn't argue against that. We knew that, whatever, we're not here to debate whether Obama is the best candidate or not. But I mean, Barack Obama, nowhere in his platform did he say he was going to end home foreclosures in the state of Michigan or anywhere else. And there was always somebody who said, "Oh, we just got to elect Barack Obama. We just and oh, we're going to go campaign for Obama." And they would try to change the conversation away from building a movement to stopping home foreclosures into a conversation about how can we make sure that Barack gets elected. And again, people wanted to hear that because it was easier. Barack was the main candidate who was getting supported. Barack was on major television. It looked like he was going to win the election. So For some people, that just seemed like an easier solution. And I remember that, and that goes to show you how a lot of people will resist answers that seem difficult, answers that seem unorthodox, answers that seem to be requiring them to change their worldview, requiring them and obligating them to live their lives differently. People will resist these things. People want an easy solution. People want a solution that makes sense. People are scared. People are very, very scared of solutions that are quite difficult. Well, I'm going to tell you why we're in the situation that we're in right now, why what's happening in Gaza is happening, why what's happening in America, where people are working 3 jobs. I'm going to tell you why this is happening. And I'm going to give you an answer that's not an easy answer. It's not a simple answer. I'm going to give you an answer that is not a magical fix-all solution. I'm not going to tell you the answer is to elect Barack Obama. I'm not going to tell you the answer is that if you have a business card that doesn't have the same name as, I'm not going to tell you that. I'm going to tell you an answer about why we're in the situation we're in. I'm going to tell you about really existing social forces that are on the side of right. I'm going to tell you about what we can do about it. I'm going to give you those answers today. But I'm not going to pretend that the answer I'm giving you is simple. I'm not going to pretend that the answer I'm giving you is easy. I'm just going to give you an answer that is the correct answer. It's not the easiest answer. It's not the simplest answer. But it's the answer. And I appreciate the super chats that are coming in. I'll make a point of answering them in the second half of our show. Please keep them rolling in. Folks, we live in a global economic setup called imperialism. Imperialism is the rule of the world by big banks and corporations, trusts, cartels, and syndicates based in the Western countries that are holding back development. They are keeping the world poor in order to keep themselves rich. All the major corporations are tied with big banks and big oil companies. BP, British Petroleum, is closely tied in with HSBC Bank. Chase Bank is closely tied in with ExxonMobil, which is the Rockefellers, used to be Standard Oil, as well as with General Electric, the corporation that was started by the Morgans, JP Morgan. The world at this point is ruled by a wealthy international oligarchy that dominates the global economy and enriches itself by controlling the trade routes, by holding back economic development, and by functioning as the global middleman in all trade. That is who rules the world right now, an international oligarchy. And this international financial oligarchy, based in Wall Street and in London, the imperialists and the imperialist system, this global system that has been set up, has faced a lot of opposition. There have been many, many countries around the world that have said, we don't want to be poor any longer. We don't want to be kept in chronic poverty. We don't want to be a captive market for you. We want to have our own wealth. We want to raise our people up out of poverty. And the first major revolution to break out of this system was the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. 1917, Russia was fighting in World War I, and World War I was unpopular. People didn't want to fight in that war, and the country was very, very poor. So they had a revolution. And a group of people called the Bolsheviks took power. After they took power, there was a lot of confusion about what they should do. But in 1928, a guy named Stalin came to power, became dominant among the Bolsheviks, and he began using public ownership of the means of production, public ownership, public control of the economy to mobilize the population to build that country up. And they built some of the world's largest power plants, hydroelectrical facilities. They built the world's largest steel mills. They built the world's largest coal mines and the world's educational system. It shocked the world. And starting from 1928 until the mid 1930s, everyone watched. The rest of the world was having a Great Depression, but Russia, under the leadership of the Communist Party, under the leadership of Stalin, raised millions of people up out of poverty, defeated the Nazi invaders. They invented space travel. They wiped out illiteracy in the country. They electrified the entire country. They brought running water to the whole country. They built train systems throughout the whole country. By breaking their country out of imperialism, the Soviet Union and Russia became modern industrial countries. And then later, after World War II, China did the same thing. China used to be the sick man of Asia. It was the sick man of Asia. Mass malnutrition, mass poverty. People were desperately poor and hungry. 1949, China broke out of this system as well. And they started building steel mills, and they started building power plants. They started mobilizing the population to build. Now China is the second largest economy in the world. Half the steel in the world is made in China. They have the world's largest telecommunications manufacturer. Every day, another person in China becomes a millionaire because they took control of their economy. They took control of the banks and the factories and the major industries in China, and they started mobilizing the population to build. And now China is a major country. China is a superpower because they broke out of this system. There's many countries around the world that have refused to be kept poor by the imperialists, have refused to let Wall Street and London keep them in chronic poverty. And they've broken out of the imperialist system, and they've mobilized to build. One of those countries was Libya. Under the leadership of Gaddafi, Libya had the highest life expectancy on the African continent. It built the great man-made river, which is the world's largest irrigation system. And people from all over Africa were trying to get into Libya. But you'll know what happened. The USA fomented a revolution in Libya. They called Gaddafi a dictator. They bombed Libya with cruise missiles. And now Libya is desperately poor once again. Iraq was another country that had broken out of their system with Ba'athist Arab socialism. And they'd also mobilized to build, and they were also invaded and destroyed. But there's another number of countries around the world, Russia and China and Iran and Venezuela and Cuba and Nicaragua, that have indeed broken out of the Western imperialist system. They've broken out of it. They've taken control of their own economies. They have economies where profits are not in command, but a revolutionary government that opposes the domination of the country by the imperialists and is dedicated to raising living standards, controls the economy, where the population is mobilized to back up that revolutionary government. In Nicaragua, they call the outfits that kind of lead the country, they call them citizens' power councils. And in every neighborhood, these citizens' power councils mobilize people to go out and carry out the goals of the revolutionary government. In Iran, they have Basij councils, mobilized oppressed, they're called. And they carry out the goals of the Islamic Revolution on a local level. The Chinese Communist Party has members in every neighborhood, in every apartment building, and they're mobilizing people to build. And that's why China's living standards keep going up. Nicaragua's living standards keep going up. Iran's living standards keep going up because the economy is not organized to make profits for a small group of owners. Rather, the economy is organized to eradicate poverty and to build the country up. Human beings want more than they already have. Human beings want growth. And because of what happened, starting with the Russian Revolution in 1917, but continuing all through the 20th century, up into the 21st century, and it's changed. Used to be classic Marxism, Leninism versus Western imperialism. Now it's much more complicated. You've got Ba'athist Arab socialism. You've got the Islamic Revolution and the axis of resistance in the Middle East. You've got Bolivarian socialism in Latin America. You've got socialism with Chinese characteristics and Deng Xiaoping theory. You've got the socialist-oriented market economy of Vietnam. You've got many different forms of anti-imperialism, many different forms of socialism that exist in the world today. But all of them are based on one driving out the imperialists and establishing the economic independence and the national control of the country, the national liberation. Two, it's based on the understanding that profits and the irrationality of the market can't be allowed to dictate what goes on in the economy. And they implement it in various ways, in the name of Islam, in the name of Christianity, in the name of classical Marxism, in the name of Bolivarian or social democratic or indigenous Marxism. There's many different ways that anti-imperialism and socialism have come into existence, but they're all based on that, defeating and driving out the Western imperialists, establishing the national sovereignty, and to instituting a rationally planned economy, control over the economy to make sure that living standards continue to rise. And all over the world, there are countries that have adopted this new way of being, have broken out of it, and they are continuing to rise. And the imperialists are sitting there on their thrones, and they're sitting there in Wall Street and in London, and they are saying, this has got to stop. This can't happen. And they're waging wars against these countries, and they're attacking these countries. Israel was set up as an outpost of Western colonialism after World War II, when it was clear that many countries in the Middle East were going to break out of Western domination. The Western colonizers, the British and the Americans, set up Israel. And Joe Biden said if Israel didn't exist, it would be necessary to invent one because Israel exists to carry out what he calls U.S. interests in the Middle East. Israel has gone to war with Egypt. Egypt was a socialist country under the leadership of Abdel Nasser, and Egypt went to war with it. Egypt has gone and bombed Iraq and destroyed nuclear power facilities. It's invaded Lebanon many, many, many times. Israel is an outpost of this system, this imperialist system. And it was the Rothschilds and it was the British imperialists with their Balfour Declaration that set up Israel to serve that end. Even before Israel was created as a state, the Israeli settlers functioned as foot soldiers of the British Empire. And they would protect the oil pipelines of BP and British Petroleum. They would terrorize local Palestinian villages, etc. All right. And that was before Israel was created in 1948. Israel was established as a state. Meanwhile, the main supporters of the Palestinians have always been the anti-imperialist countries. The Soviet Union gave a huge amount of support to the Palestinian resistance, recognized the Palestine Liberation Organization. China, Mao praised the Palestinians and praised the Arab people in their fight for national liberation. Gaddafi was a huge supporter of the Palestinians. The North Koreans have been huge supporters of the Palestinians. There's many, many examples of all over the world. The main people backing the Palestinians have been these countries that have broken out of Western domination. And the main force backing Israel has been Britain and America. The leaders of imperialism, Wall Street and London, have been the main backers of Israel. And so in this context, the Palestinians who live, as many know, in an open-air prison that are being terrorized are fighting back. And Iran, which is a country that has broken out of this system, is supporting them. And Syria, which is a country that has broken out of this system, is supporting them. The revolutionary forces in Yemen are supporting them. The revolutionary forces in Lebanon, Hezbollah, they're supporting them. And they're being supported. And the Western imperialists are trying to back up Israel. And the road to freedom for the Palestinian people is economic development of the region. The stronger that Russia and China get, the more the Shanghai Cooperation Organization expands, the more of an economic incentive there will be for Israel to grant more rights to the Palestinians, and that the road to freedom for the Palestinians is the rise of the anti-imperialist camp. The stronger that Russia gets, the stronger that China gets, the stronger Iran gets, the more motivation there will be to resolve the Palestinian question, to grant the Palestinian people their basic rights. However, as long as the British and the Americans are able to have the upper hand, they're going to strengthen Israel to be their foot soldier, and they are going to keep their their boot on the neck of the Palestinian people as a way to hold back the movement of resistance. The road to freedom for the Palestinian people and the road to the end of the oppression of the Palestinians is the rise of anti-imperialism and the defeat of Wall Street in London. Now, obviously, what will that look like? I don't know, right? And people say, well, Caleb, are you saying a two-state solution or one-state solution? Look, I am the kind of person that feels that the creation of Israel in 1948 was illegitimate, that kicking the Palestinians out of their homes and that Israel as a settler state, a Jewish settler state, doesn't have the right to exist, that its existence is in violation of international law. If you're going to have a country, that country has to be for all the people living there, not just one ethnic group, one religion, one nationality. So that is my feeling. But regardless, rather than talking about what I think is right and wrong, which I don't think Israel and its existence is right, but regardless, whether there emerges a two-state solution with a Palestinian state, regardless, the only way you're going to see a resolution of this is with Russia and China and Iran and Venezuela and Cuba and all the anti-imperialist countries getting stronger, and Wall Street and London and the Western imperialist financial system getting weaker. That is the road to liberation for the Palestinians. What that liberation will look like, I do not know. I cannot predict the future. But the Palestinians will ultimately triumph, and Israel will ultimately be defeated. But the way that will happen is in conjunction with the global anti-imperialist force getting stronger and Western imperialism getting weaker. But then that raises the question, what about us here in the United States? What about the Americans? If you go to any gas station in this country, you just sit there and you wait. And you will watch a car pull up. And that car will go to the gas tank, and a woman will get out of that car, usually a mother. There'll be kids in the back seat. She'll open the gas tank, and she'll very carefully stick that gas nozzle, that gas pump in. She'll very carefully watch, and she'll put only $10 worth of gas into her car, maybe $15 worth of gas into her car. Now, you can't go very far with $10 worth of gas. She's not filling up her tank. She's just putting $10 of gas into the car. Why? Because that's enough gas to get the kids to school. That's enough gas to get the kids to get to the grocery store, to get some food to feed the family. They're just struggling to get by. They can't afford to fill up their gas tank. They can just afford a little bit more to keep the car going. That's a crime. That is absolutely a crime. But you will see it at any major gas station in this country. You will see that. You will see families that are scraping together the money to pay their bills, scraping together just enough to keep going. And it's a crime. It's absolutely criminal what's being done. But that is what the American people have been subjected to. And I'll tell you why this is happening. It's happening for two reasons. The first reason is that for a long time, the way they kept stability in the homelands of imperialism, the way that they kept Britain stable, the way they kept America stable, the way France and Germany were kept stable, is that while the imperialists were going around the world, carving out spheres of influence, beating down different nations, holding back development, beating down the people of South America, beating down the African people, taking their resources, taking the resources of the people of the Middle East, but leaving the people there in poverty. While Nigeria became a huge oil exporting country, but the people of Nigeria were deeply impoverished and remain deeply impoverished, while people in Latin America were kept poor, while their resources, their minerals were being used to enrich the imperialists. While this was happening, The imperialists understood that in order to have peace in the homeland, they had to give some crumbs. They had to give some crumbs to a layer of people at home. They maintained what they called the aristocracy of labor, which was a section of the working class that got paid more money than other workers. In America, it was white people. It was that white middle class. They were not subjected to the conditions that black people were subjected to. They were not subjected to the conditions you'll find in Appalachia. They were not subjected to the conditions that Latino people and Chicano people are subjected to. There was a white middle class, and they weren't rich. They weren't living in absolute luxury, but they got some of the crumbs from the imperialist table. And because of that, they thought they were better, and they didn't stand in solidarity with oppressed people around the world. They had it in their minds that they were more like the imperialists than they were like the people in Africa or Asia or Latin America. And they maintained this layer of U.S. society they call the labor aristocracy, the aristocracy of labor, the industrial middle class, some people call it. And that was how they kept peace at home so they could colonize and exploit people around the world. The aristocracy of labor. However, the imperialists are now realizing that as Russia and China get stronger, and as country after country breaks out of their grip, they cannot afford an aristocracy of labor any longer. They can't afford it. I mean, they are losing ground around the world, and they can't afford it. And so this aristocracy of labor that once held U.S. society together is being eroded. And they can't afford to bribe a section of the working class in the homeland the way that they used to. That's the first factor. The second factor is the technological revolution. The computer revolution. The breakthroughs in artificial intelligence, the breakthroughs in all kinds of technological advancement. At this point, computers can play chess better than humans can. Computers can trade stocks better than humans can. Computers can make things in very elaborate ways. Look at 3D printers. They don't need workers at the assembly line the same way they used to. That labor aristocracy, that white middle class, that was auto workers. That was steel workers. That was rubber workers. They don't need those folks anymore. The factories don't need them. Right? A steel mill that used to employ thousands of people can now employ less than 100. They don't need workers at the assembly line the way they once did. Technological progress and advancement has shot to higher levels than ever before seen, and that should be a great thing. It points to the fact that we human beings are amazing. We have a godlike creative ability. We are constantly reinventing the way we interact with our environment. We human beings are amazing. In just 4,000 or 5,000 years, we've gone from hunter-gatherers and cavemen and cave-dwelling people to space travel and iPhones and artificial intelligence and 3D printers. And I mean, it's amazing what we human beings have done. We have done utterly amazing things as a species. We have constantly been able to reinvent the way we interact with our environment. However, if you look at the history of human beings, as we change the way we interact with our environment, the economic, social system also changes. When hunter-gatherer civilization existed, we shared everything. We lived in tribes of 20 or 30 people. We went around hunting and gathering together, and not everyone was equal necessarily in the tribes. Some people maybe got more food than other people. Women took care of children, and men were hunters, and there was some kind of division of labor. But at the end of the day, they were all one tribe, 20 or 30 people hunting and gathering. They call that primitive communism, primitive communalism, hunter-gatherer civilization. But when it got to the point that we were growing our own food, The mode of production, the social system had to change. You can't grow your own food with hunter-gatherer civilization. And so we moved to the stage called slavery. And slavery was a stage where you had some people who owned the land and some people who worked on the land, and those people who worked on the land were owned by the guy who owned the land. After a while, slavery gave birth to feudalism. And after a while, feudalism gave birth to capitalism. And capitalism moved into its stage of imperialism. Every time we advance in forms of technology, and we have a huge technological leap that changes the way production is done. The original mode of production was hunting and gathering, but when we had a huge leap and we started growing our own food and domesticating animals, that was a huge leap, and we had to adopt a new system. And when we went from an agrarian economy to an industrial economy, when they started having factories to make products and all of that, we had to go from feudalism to capitalism because it required a new mode of production. Well, the computer revolution has rendered capitalism and imperialism outmoded. Just like feudalism could not continue once you had trade routes and once you had printing presses. Now, capitalism cannot continue with 3D printers. Capitalism cannot continue with artificial intelligence. The computer revolution has taken production to a new higher level in which it is no longer sustainable to maintain production organized for profit. You need rational central planning of the economy. Self-driving cars would be a great thing in a rational society. In a normal, healthy society, everyone would be happy about self-driving cars. Self-driving cars would mean this job called driving was no longer necessary. But it's capitalism. And the fact that you only get hired if a boss can make profits from your labor, it's capitalism that says that if you can replace a human being with a machine, that's a good thing, and that can help maximize your profits. It's capitalism that makes self-driving cars a nightmare, right? And that this built-in problem of production organized for profit, this problem that Karl Marx wrote about, overproduction, the tendency of the rate of profit to fall, this problem is back like you wouldn't believe. And that is also why people in the United States are working 3 jobs to try and make ends meet. That's why the roads are falling apart. That's why the capitalists are desperate to make profits and continue making profits as our country gets poorer. They're not making profits off of hiring people to work in factories anymore, so they've turned throwing people in prison as a way to make profits. They're not making profits from hiring people to develop new science and technological breakthroughs, so they're making profits from bombing people in other countries. A military-industrial complex. They're not making profits from, having people do useful work and get paid and, live more prosperous lives. So they're making profits by getting people addicted to opioids. All the mechanisms through which capitalists make profit more and more are cannibalistic mechanisms that break down the productive force of society. The leech class, the usury class, the financier class, the banker elite that runs the United States has gotten to the point that they cannot and will not maintain a healthy economy in the United States. So instead, they have become dedicated. They have become fully dedicated to trying to scrape together as much profit as they can amid a changing economy. That the mechanisms that they're using to make their profits are cannibalistic mechanisms. They're not making money from building houses anymore, so they're making money from foreclosing on houses now. They're not making money from building people up, so they're making money from locking people in. They're not making money from having people get healthier and live longer lives, so they're making money through people killing themselves or through people destroying themselves with opioids and drugs. They're not making money through building countries up around the world. They never did. Now they're making money by tearing countries down with war and militarism. That the irrational nature of this system, the foundation of the imperialist order, which is production organized to maximize profits for private owners, that mode of production cannot continue. And the higher tech stage, the higher development that's coming in, the great advances in human progress and technology can no longer maintain this way of being. And so we must, out of necessity, move toward an economic system where production is rationally organized. And already the countries around the world that have broken free from that system have adopted this way of doing things. They've adopted socialism or planned production, production organized for the benefit of society, central planning of production rather than private ownership of production as a way of breaking out of the imperialist system and building themselves up. Well, the answer for the Palestinians, the answer for the people in your neighborhood who are struggling to pay their bills, for that woman who's working 3 jobs, for that mother who is putting $10 or $15 worth of gas in her car just to keep the car going until the next payday, struggling. The answer is for America to do the same thing that China has done, the same thing that Iran has done, the same thing that Cuba has done, that Venezuela has done. We need to free our country from imperialism. America needs to break out of the imperialist system. We need a government of action to fight for working families. We need a government of action that will fight for working families. We need forces in power in Washington, D.C., that'll take control of America's oil, America's coal, America's timber, America's natural gas, that will take control of America's banking and credit and finance system and organize the economy to serve public good and not the profits of a wealthy few. We need a government that will mobilize the next generation to go out and build and construct, build new highways, build new bridges, build new high-speed railway, build new universities, start making breakthroughs in fusion energy. We need a government of action that will mobilize the population to build and enact an economic bill of rights. To see the population not as an annoying horde to be managed, but rather as an investment in the future. We should give everyone a decent education, not as a gift, not as a handout, but because if we have an educated population, they can go out and build things. They can develop new technology. They will make our country richer. We should give everyone a job, not as a handout, but because the productive labor of every person should be utilized to build a stronger country. We should give everyone decent housing, not because we just want to be nice people, but because if we want a productive, healthy society, that means people have a decent place to live. We should see investing in our population and enacting the economic bill of rights that Roosevelt spoke of as an investment in the future, not as a handout, not as a gift, not as charity, but as an investment in the future of our nation. And that's the 4-point plan of the Center for Political Innovation. Mass mobilization of the population to rebuild the country, public control of our natural resources, public control of our banking system, cancel the debt, public ownership of the banks and the credit system, and fourth, an economic bill of rights, securing the right of all Americans to housing, jobs, healthcare, etc. That's our 4-point economic program for a government of action that fights for working families. And if the United States were to break out of imperialism, that would be the end of Israel's oppression of the Palestinians, because Israel is the biggest welfare queen that you've ever seen. They depend on government subsidies from the United States, free weaponry from the United States, and handouts, and a government of action that was serving the people of this country, not Wall Street, not the London Stock Exchange, but the American people. A government of action would not be supporting them. And furthermore, this is the solution for the people in your neighborhood and your community. Because a government of action would rebuild their neighborhoods. It would provide them with decent jobs. It would build up the country. This is the solution. The solution to the crisis that you're facing is not a simple one. It took me a long time to explain. I've been on here for 47 minutes. But that is the solution to the problem that we're facing. And I got to tell you, we take this seriously. We take this very, very seriously. I will show you how seriously we take it. I will show you an image of how seriously we take it. All over Portland, Oregon right now, these materials are going up. Now, I don't know if you can clearly see, but that long one there that says Dare to Win a World Beyond Imperialism, it's got the 2 QR codes. That's called a door knocker. There are hundreds of people in Oregon City and in Portland, Oregon, who are waking up in the morning to find one of these on their door, hanging from their doorknob. Our members are going out at night and putting these door knockers on the doors of people in Portland, Oregon, people who would never go looking for this on the internet, people who would never even think about wanting to hear what a communist RT guy like Caleb has to say. They're waking up in the morning to find that somebody, and they don't know who, in the middle of the night put this on their doorknob, inviting them to a conference called Dare to Win a World Beyond Imperialism. Meanwhile, posters, glossy posters, are going up on the wall, on the walls, on the telephone poles all over Portland. Palm cards are being left around. We are bringing this message to the people. We have an auditorium in Portland area, that holds 250 people. And we have volunteers from all over the country, from Boston, from California, from Seattle, from New York City, from Pennsylvania, from Chicago, who are going to Portland to put up these posters, to hang these door knockers, to distribute these palm cards, and to make sure that that auditorium fills up with people. This is happening right now. At the very moment that you are watching this, there are door knockers being hung on doors. There are palm cards being distributed at this very moment. We are doing it because we are planning a massive anti-imperialist rally in Portland, Oregon on December 2nd. We are bringing guests in from around the world, from around the country, Scott Ritter, Jyoti Brar, and others. We are going to convene a major anti-imperialist rally in Portland, Oregon on December 2nd to let people know about what's really behind the hatred for Russia, what's really behind the hatred for China and Iran and Venezuela and Cuba, to let people know why it is that Palestinians are being killed, why our government does not seem to care about the people, and to put forward our program, our 4-point plan, our economic Bill of Rights to improve people's conditions. And we are doing it. We are building for a major anti-imperialist rally. We are doing this. And there are a lot of people nowadays who talk as if they are socialists, who talk as if they are communists, who talk as if they are Marxists or radicals. But they have no desire to directly speak to the American people. All right? I give my homage and my respect to all the people marching through the streets of New York City and all over this country with Palestinian flags right now. I do support them. And I do think that they are courageous because there's such an anti-Palestinian, pro-Israel bias in American media because they're being shamed and attacked. I salute them for what they are doing. But at the same time, we're doing it differently. In the lead up to our conference in Portland, our volunteers are going to have a rally in downtown Portland. We will not announce the date or the time. We're just going to do it. And we're going to show up and we're going to have Palestinian flags, but we will also have American flags. And we will have signs saying money for jobs and schools in America, not for Israel. We will say that Israel is bad for America's working families. We will say that if you love the people in your community, you love the people in your country, you love your neighborhood and your family, you should hate Israel. Because right now, instead of investing in your community and your country and your neighborhood, they are sending money to Israel. And our messaging style won't be woke. We won't give the middle finger to America, say America's an evil, racist settler country. We're going to say that Joe Biden's a traitor. Joe Biden's a traitor to this country. He's betrayed the children of America. He's betrayed the people of this country. He's betrayed the elderly. He's betrayed the young. He is a servant of the Wall Street Zionists and not of the American people. And that if you truly love this country, you should want a government of action that will fight for working families. That will be our message. And our rally won't be huge. It'll be small. But our message will ring true because there will be millions of Americans who would never be able to relate to a Palestine rally full of Palestine flags, who would never be able to relate to a crowd of people saying free, free Palestine, that will be able to relate to a crowd of people saying money for American jobs, money for schools, money for healthcare, not for some foreign war, some foreign country that's important to Wall Street that has nothing to do with my community, my neighborhood, and my people. That will be our message. And there's no other communist group in America that will talk that way. My wife, she went to a Palestine rally, had a good time, saw some of her friends. She came to me and she said, "You know, Caleb, we've been going to Palestine rallies like this for years." And I said, "Yep." And she said, "And they've always been the same." And I said, "Yep." "And they never make a difference." And I said, "Yep." And I said, "But imagine that they had American flags instead of just Palestinian flags. Imagine that they said money for America, not for Israel. Wouldn't those protests make a difference?" She said, "Absolutely." And I said, "But they won't do that, will they?" She said, "No." And I said, "Because they hate America just as much as they hate Israel." And she said, "Yep. There's a reason that the communist groups in America are small and fringe and irrelevant. And that is because they're led by people with names like Brian Becker, Bob Avakian, Fred Goldstein. They're led by elderly people who are alienated from U.S. society, who do not relate to the American people, who have contempt for the people that they are supposedly fighting for, and they will never make an appeal to the American people. They view themselves as outsiders. They view themselves as enemies. They view American people, American culture, American religion, American society with contempt. And because of that, they render themselves to be irrelevant in the political conversation. And that is why the communist groups remain irrelevant. But if you look at American history, there have been two communist groups that have actually mattered. One was the Black Panther Party of the 1970s. And why did they matter? Because they were the expression of the black community. Right? They sounded like the black community. They loved the black community. They embraced Malcolm X. Read Mumia Abu-Jamal's very good book, We Want Freedom, A Life in the Black Panther Party. He talks about how they were largely a Malcolmist party, a party of Malcolm X. They gave voice to the black community. And because of that, they built a base and they had a huge following. They were the expression of the black community and its desires. And there was the Communist Party. The Communist Party USA of the 1930s. During the Roosevelt years, the Communist Party of America had a lot of influence. They had huge conventions in Madison Square Garden. And what was their slogan during those years? They said, communism is nothing but 20th century Americanism. If Washington and Jefferson and Lincoln were alive today, they would be members of the Communist Party, right? And that they said that they were the expression of the American people. And their leader was a guy named William Z. Foster, who was a working class Irish Catholic American from Philadelphia. And their other leader was a guy named Earl Browder, who was a farmer from Kansas. And their other leader was a guy named Gus Hall, who was a big, tall Finnish steel worker from the Iron Ranges of Minneapolis and Minnesota. And they said that they were the expression of the American people. And that is how they were able to build a mass movement. If communism and if anti-imperialism, maybe you don't want to call it communism, right? Maybe the Cold War is over and you don't want to do the ML thing anymore, right? Maybe that's a little bit out of date, right? Maybe things are different. If anti-imperialism, if the city building tendency, that's what we call it, city builders, the city building tendency. If the city building tendency, the global opposition to imperialism and Wall Street monopolism and the degrowth, grinding into poverty agenda of the ultra-rich, if that movement is going to build a base among the American people, that movement must embrace the American people. It must become an expression not of people who are alienated from U.S. society, who feel alienated and angry at U.S. society, but rather people who see themselves as the champions of American society against the corrupt, vandal influence that has weaseled its way into power and is destroying everything that we Americans love and hold dear in our hearts. That is the only way that we're ever going to see anything that looks like socialism or anti-imperialism in this country. And again, it's not an easy solution. It'd be much easier if I could just get on here and say, go to your local Palestine rally, join your local leftist counterculture hippie group. But the answer is not easy. These are difficult times, and the solution is not simple. But we every day are pushing that solution, and I got to just tell you, we need your help. We urgently need your help. We urgently need your help. It is not easy to do what we are doing right now. There's no other way to say it. It is really difficult what we're doing. Getting the volunteers to Portland, getting the plane tickets for our international guests, getting housing for our volunteers to stay in, getting posters put up, and we need your support. We urgently need your help to do this. And if you can't make a financial contribution, give us your time. Come to Portland and help us build the conference. It's urgent. No one else is going to do what we're going to do. No one else is going to be out there with American flags and Palestinian flags. Nobody. No one is going to do what we're going to do. There's nobody who has the courage to do what we are going to do. Come, help us do it. Or help us promote it online. Join our online outreach team. December 2nd is going to make or break the anti-imperialist movement in this country. If we can pull this off, if we can have the anti-imperialist mega rally that I am urging people to build, that we have been building for months, if we can do this, this will be a game changer. This will be a decisive game changer in the political conversation. For a while, the left was doing their woke thing and alienating the American people. But now, many of the woke people are pro-Palestine and anti-Israel, and the establishment is pro-Israel. And for a while, there were many on the right who were giving voice to populistic sentiments, who were giving voice to anti-war feelings, but now they've proven themselves to be beholden to wealthy pro-Israel funders like Sheldon Adelson and others, and they have deviated, and now they are pro-war once again. So now is the time that the discredited left has stepped aside, the discredited right has stepped aside, that we must walk onto the stage. The city-building tendency must walk onto the political stage and proclaim ourselves to be the ones that all of America has been waiting for. We are who they have been waiting for. They have been waiting for us. They have been waiting for us to step up to the plate. The specter of populism hangs over America. Not right-wing populism, not wokeism, but populism, genuine people's power, genuine love for the country, the communities that we live in, general admiration and acceptance and affection for the people. We are the ones who can give the message that is urgently needed in our time, and there are no other forces that can give that message. There are none. No one will do it but us. Nobody is going to do it but us. If you donate to the Answer Coalition, you're donating to more of the same Palestinian rallies that we've had for the last 20 years that have gone nowhere. If you donate to I don't even know what, you're donating to keep things on the hamster wheel. The hamster wheel that just keeps going around and round and round. But we are the ones who are putting forward an innovative solution. We are the Center for Political Innovation. That's what we are. We are the Center for Political Innovation. And we are innovating to find new solutions for the time that we are living in. But we urgently need you. We urgently need you. We need you to help us build the conference in Portland. We need you to help us publicize the conference in Portland. We need you to do everything you can. Gala, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Gala. And I'm going to keep on here, and we're building. We actually have arranged, it's not on the poster yet, but we've arranged for a very important pro-Palestine speaker to come. I can't announce it yet. I have to confer things. But it looks like there will be a very, very important pro-Palestinian speaker coming all the way from California to speak at our conference, who will raise the Palestine issue and will also talk about Iran in ways that that audiences may not be familiar with. We are making sure that this upcoming conference in Portland is an all-day mega anti-imperialist rally that will shake the ground and will shake the country like you wouldn't believe. It's a game changer, and it's a test case. We're going to learn from this, and we're going to replicate it in another region, in another part of the country. And then we're going to replicate it in another region. After we do Portland and the Pacific Northwest, after we finish our campaign there in December, we're headed to the South. We're headed to the South. Not sure where in the South, but we're going to learn from Portland. We're going to learn from the Pacific Northwest, and then we're headed to the South. We haven't done anything in the South yet. Might be Alabama, might be Mississippi. I can't even think about it right now. Might be the Florida Panhandle. I don't know where in the South we're going, but we're going to the South next. And after that, we're going back to the Midwest. We're going back to Chicago. We're going back to Detroit. We're going back to the heartland. And we are going to take this anti-imperialist, optimistic, constructive city builder socialism to every corner of this country. And we are going to build an organization of people that frame socialism in a completely different way. A socialism that is oozing with love for the country. A socialism that is oozing with love for the community, love for the nation, love for the family, love for our people, and contempt for the forces of greed and destruction that bring wars and bring impoverishment. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing, folks. We are innovating. We are innovating. We're innovating. We're getting things done. And we need you. We need you. We need you. We absolutely need you. And Time is kind of running out. I'm getting nervous, right? It's going to be a tight squeeze. And Elizabeth Young, our president, is working harder than you would believe. And a lot of people are stepping out up to the plate to help us, but we need your support. We urgently need your support. There's links down below about how you can contribute, how you can register. If you're coming to the conference, please register so that we know you're coming. It's important that we know who's going to be there. It's important that we have people in town who can help with the transportation, because there's going to be a lot of local people, college students, older folks who are going to need to get picked up and taken home in order to be there at the event. There's a lot that needs to be done between now and December 2nd. It is a month away. We are 1 month out. Today is November 2nd, and the conference is on December 2nd. And we need you. We urgently need your help. We need your help. You can make a difference here. And by helping us do this, you are making way more of a difference, way more of a difference than if you help one of the hamster wheels. If you help one of the people who's been doing this for 50 years and seen no progress, that's one thing. But if you help us, you are contributing to an actual solution. I just spent the last hour explaining why we have an understanding, why we have a message that's not going to be easy for some people to hear, but it's a real answer. We have the answer for the Palestinians. We have the answer for the American people. So as I conclude my opening remarks, I told you that story about the mother driving up to the gas tank and taking the nozzle, putting it in the gas tank, pumping $10 worth of gas, just enough to pay her bills, just enough to get through the day, just enough to get the kids to school, just enough to get to the grocery store and get some food, and how they're struggling. I want you to think not about that mother who's struggling, but I want you to think about the kids in the back seat. Think about the kids in the back seat. That is who we are fighting for. That is who we are fighting for. We are fighting for the kids in the back seat so that they can have a future in this country beyond the prisons, beyond the suicides, beyond the opioids, beyond the chaos and crime. We are fighting for the kids in the back seat. That is who we are fighting for. We're fighting so that they have a world to inherit. That's who we're fighting for. We are fighting so that they can grow up and live prosperous lives and have children of their own. We are fighting for a world where hunger and poverty and scarcity and hopelessness is eradicated, and human creativity and growth expands to new heights. That is what we are fighting for. We are fighting for the love of humanity. That's what I'll leave you with.